Hello everyone and welcome to our introductory video to chapter 3, Thinkers. Before we begin with thinkers and the first thinker, who is Emile Durkheim, we will introduce uh, generally the birth of sociology, how it all began, and specifically some of the ideas of Auguste Comte, who is also termed as the father of sociology. The beginning of sociology had its origins in Europe, which was a very important time in human history. A lot of drastic changes came in a very short amount of time. Also, specifically, we are going to learn our first perspective in sociology, why it came, and the roots of its origin. We are also going to learn about Auguste Comte. He is not specifically mentioned in the syllabus in chapter 3, but he is important to know the origins of sociology. And using Auguste Comte, we are going to show you a structured approach to go about thinkers. And this approach we're going to follow in our further lectures in all the thinkers of chapter 3. For a more personalized approach, join Telegram. The link is given in the comments. So, sociology is all about the social context. The context of where you're born is really important, if it is in 2018 or 1918, right? If you were a woman born now or in the 1900s, if you were born in an upper caste or in a lower caste, the story that you could tell about your life will be utterly different in all these cases. This context is what C. Wright Mills, he's an American sociologist, he calls it as the sociological imagination. So, in his words, it is the ability to see how society, history, and personal narratives intersect. So, this is what the subject sociology gives to you, the ability to analyze things not only on the basis of individual action, but how the action itself is a product of circumstances. And this sociological imagination is very important. Like in the scenario we talked about in answer writing, how two students approach the same question. So, how did socio begin? So, before tracing the history of sociology, we have to talk about a term, modernity. You must have heard a lot about this term. And this term is used in a lot of different contexts, uh, like as an adjective. You're looking very modern, and it can be used as an insult, like in a Hindu article a few days back. This article came. So this article came in the Hindu a few days back, which created a controversy. It was about a textbook which was subscribed for CBSE students. Right. So now let's look at the contents of actually what the article, the textbook said. Uh, it was about a modern girl, right? And it talked about how the modern girl has now a lot of choices, right? So if they're talking about modern, that means they're comparing it to some things, right? So which is usually traditional. So, so if the modern girl now has a lot of choices, then she did not, right? But then, it this article gives a lot of values, opinion about how that choices have mostly led to the girl deviating maybe from the ideal model, and these choices are not good. That means she is no longer shy, obedient, homely, as the second para says. Right, so this is also a very important aspect of sociology. This is called the fact value dichotomy. Can you keep separate your facts from your values? So this we'll be learning in chapter 2. Right, so the point to notice is that modernity and modern has a lot of different opinions, but uh, but for sociology we're going to be talking about a very specific meaning of modernity. For us, it would assume a rational actor, That means a person who thinks in a means and relationship, right? Things which will help him or her get better in life. In an ordered world, that can be directed, right? So if it can be directed, if the events can be controlled, then we can make sure everyone gains something out of this. This is the ideal type of modernity. So ideal type is a concept, sociological concept, which was given by Max Weber. He's a thinker in our chapter 3. So we are going to create an ideal type meaning of modernity and what it should mean, and then compare it with all social phenomena, right? You will get this idea more, how what are ideal types and how to use them when we talk about Weber. So the key element of this modernity is intentionality. All the theories and scientific advances were based on assumptions about humans and human nature and the relationship between social institutions and citizens. Like, for example, should the church, which is a religious institution, control governance? There were specific views regarding this, and hence we say intentionality, right? The intention to choose a particular path. The laws and theories were made with a purpose and a vision to guide society. And this modernity emerged during 17th century in Europe. What I would like to you to imagine is 17th century Europe. How it was, what were the conditions. So Europe had just come out of what was called as an era of the dark ages. That was the age which was surrounded by superstition and mysticism. When people believed that kings had divine powers and science and scientific discovery were feared, like Galileo was burnt at stake for saying that the earth moves around the sun, right? So this period went away with the coming of another era called the era of Renaissance and the phase of what is called as the Enlightenment. This was a period where a lot of scientific discoveries were made. Science might look very common to you now, you see it everywhere, yeah, and no one can live without it. But during that time, it was drastically, a very drastically different way of thinking. If you could predict nature, then could you control it? The need to control went into a lot of subjects, including sociology. The question in sociology was that if society is also governed by such invincible laws, can we discover it? And so, does this mean can we control our life and as we desired by some fundamental laws which were right now invincible to us? Newton had made them somewhat visible. There was a design to everything, and science was the only way to uncover it. In world history, you would have learned that this was an era where there were massive movements of population towards urban centers. There was a movement in England which for land consolidation. They had moved out the small and medium farmers, and they all went towards the urban centers. So this was also a factor which led to the industrial revolution. So the big idea behind the Enlightenment, right, this way of thinking, was that society was controlled by reason rather than tradition. This challenged the dominant philosophical and religious visions of the universe. What is important to see is that the Enlightenment view of science was motivated, you know, for via a strong moral vision. The use of reason and science. They argued that uh, the society should be based on rationality and the natural rights of man rather than tradition and privilege. They believed that progress of humanity was tied to growth of reason, and the French monarchy and social structure was inhibiting growth. This was expressed economically in Adam Smith, in his book, his Magna Carta, The Wealth of Nations, which said that market forces based on individual Rational calculation rather than tradition should control the economy, allowing rationality free expression, guaranteed wealth and happiness. So, this was a very new way of thinking during that time. So, there were also massive movements in population, like during the Industrial Revolution. So, there was the birth of new nation states like Germany and Italy. Mass media was coming into being with the invention of the printing press during the Industrial Revolution. Now, books could be mass produced. Capitalism was conceptualized, as we saw. So, this was a time of rapid social change, and this created the ideal ground for the birth of sociology. So, how exactly does a subject come into existence? Here you will see two key terms. For any subject to exist, there should be something to study, of course. So, this is called as the ontology. Like astronomy exists for the study of outer space objects and their movements. Similarly, there should also be a way of studying it. Like most physical sciences are studied via empiricism, the scientific method. Recording observation, making general laws, testing those laws. So this is called as the epistemology of the subject. So the two terms are ontology, why the subject matter exists, and epistemology, a way of studying it. But it's not that simple. For sociology, there is a dispute regarding what is to be its ontology and what is to be its epistemology, which gives rise to the different perspectives in sociology. So now comes the story of Comte, the founder of sociology as a discipline. So he is called as the founder because he basically coined the term, the first person, and he was the first to systematically organize the discipline and gave us our first beginning conceptual framework. And he also gave birth to the first perspective in sociology, which we learn, which is called as positivism. So, positivism is a philosophy of science first articulated by Auguste Comte. So, it is based on three foundations. First, the belief in infinite potential of human mind and knowledge, from theological, metaphysical, and finally the positivistic stage. What they are, we will see. Everything within this universe, this is the second foundation. Everything within this universe is empirical and operates within natural laws that govern behavior in predictable ways. Example, similarly to the laws of gravity, which controls our universe. And the third foundation is the science is the best way to improve human existence. So this is the first sociological perspective, and questions do come on directly on this, like in short notes in the question paper, 10 markers. Uh, Sometimes they can just say positivism, and you have to write a short note on it, right? Or positive uh, sociology. So that is also a word for the same thing. So let's begin with Comte. Uh, we will first see his biography. To study a thinker, any thinker, we'll first look at his or her biography. So, why are biographies important, right? Why do you need to know their life experience? It's because a person's social experience matters. People feel, think, and act because of the society in which they live in. The values and aspirations that guided the theorist have come out of their life circumstances. So this, placing ourselves in their shoes, it allows us to better understand theory. So let's begin with Comte. Comte was born in France in 1978. If you remember, this was the beginning of the French Revolution, and he lived till 1857. So a lot of things happened during this time. Europe went through a lot of social and political changes. He was born to a royalist, and that means someone close to the royal family, and a Catholic, family, which was the dominant religion. And society was changing from monarchy to democracy, right? Monarchy, where you believe in the divine rights of kings, and democracy, where you believe in the will of the people. There were also events like the famous Reign of Terror, where Robespierre, during the French Revolution, started to kill everyone who did not agree with him, basically, via the guillotine, that is, cutting their head off. This was the time of Napoleon, who came just after the French Revolution, and ironically, the revolution, which began to as a opposition to monarchy, ended up with the monarchy again of Napoleon. So a lot of political upheaval and unrest was happening. Comte broke away from his family's Catholicism and support of monarchy at a very early age of 14. He saw all the social disorganization of the time necessary step towards the greater good. That means he saw the shock was necessary to lay the foundations of sociology. So, what was Comte's sociology? Let's see first some of his influences, some of the people who influenced his theory. So, that means he took some of their ideas and expressed them. So, this was a time of Nicolas de Condorcet. So, he was a very famous person. He defined the modern idea of progress, that the human mind can be perfected. Absolutely. He saw progress linked to education, and he created the modern secularized way of education, which is followed in most countries in the world. That is separating religious education from schools and mandatory primary education of boys and girls. He proposed merging of the physical and moral sciences, which Comte made into the discipline of sociology. The next person is Henry de Saint Simon. So he was the founder, one of the founders of Christian socialism, that is joining science and industry, that is work to make your life better. So for Saint Simon, hope of equality and the end of human misery lay in theoretical advances in science, practically applied to the production of industry. For Saint Simon, scientists were the priests of a new social order. From this perspective, science, technology, and capitalism were to be used ethically for the betterment of the human condition. Now remember, this was a time when science had just come and blown everyone away, right, with what it could do. So everyone was swayed in their in the power and thought it could be applied everywhere. This way of thinking. So let's talk about one of the central ideas of Auguste Comte, which is the evolution of knowledge. Right. So as we have seen, the in Enlightenment, this way of thinking on that is positivism, right? Belief in science was a new thing. It came from an era where belief was based upon tradition and religion, to the discovery that there were natural laws which followed some design, and using positivism we could uncover that design, using specific ways of finding knowledge, right, which is scientific. So Comte saw this as a process in which all knowledge actually evolves, right? This way of thinking had swept into all different disciplines. So Comte saw this as a natural stage in evolution of knowledge. So for Comte, increasing human control over the natural environment marks the historical process of civilization in general. So, in the beginning stages of human society, we had little control over our sources of basic essential needs, like the hunter-gatherers, the tribals during that time. They had to move from one place to another because food would get depleted at one source. So, as humanity figured out agriculture, so we no longer had to move. So, as civilization marches forward, we increase control. this span of control. We change nature to fit our needs. So this powers become greater as our mental powers increased. So according to Comte, both mind and knowledge have moved through three distinct stages, each phase defined by its qualities of imagination and observation. So Comte saw each of the stage building upon the previous stage, learning from the previous stage and taking it further. The first stage is the theological stage. So here people sought absolute knowledge. Absolute knowledge means they wanted to know certainly why it happened, the essential nature and the cause of everything. So this meant that people wanted to know why things happen, not the forces which cause it to happen, or not the thing itself. And that's why the first reaction of the people was why? Why me? Why did it happen to me? So in this phase, imagination ruled over observation. So facts observed are explained by means of invented facts. In the second stage of knowledge is the metaphysical stage, and it is a transitory stage, that is, it is in between. It has both the attributes of the first stage and the last stage. Third stage is where all the knowledge will end up with ultimately. It is the positive stage. It is here that observation triumphs over imagination. Truth is judged by empirical observation, and progress is via skepticism. That is, testing the observation, trying to prove it false. The empirical assessment uh, is done in all theories. So, scientific theories explain not why, but how it happens. So, this is the shift in emphasis, right? Not in why something happened, but how something happened or how it works. The theory is then taken and takes place instead of spiritual accounts. So, this is the core of the positivist method theory. So, as you see here, there is also a shift from faith in the unseen to skepticism and empirical examination. So they are two things poles apart. Comte saw three stages: theological, metaphysical, and positive of evolution of mind and society. Well, this evolution is true for the separate disciplines also. Each discipline will evolve via these three stages. Each branch of science grew to be positivistic ultimately. So, like for Comte, there was a specific order which is not that important for us, like physics, chemistry, physiology, and everyone reaches the last stage at different points of time. But the last branch of her study to become positivistic was the study of society, which Comte called as social physics or sociology. Sociology came last because of the complexity of the subject, which is the whole of human society, and its dependence on other fields of study. But Comte saw something more. Comte saw that this is what makes sociology so important. It is the keystone, without which the whole structure will fall, which holds the whole thing together and is placed at the last in a building. So Comte claimed that this science, sociology, will also be able to embrace and hold together the rest of the sciences, just like a keystone. Because it developed last and could encompass other sciences, Comte dubbed sociology the queen of the sciences. So, so this is a very big idea. What Comte is trying to say, that Sociology is dependent on all subjects. Any changes in any of the disciplines affects sociology. So that's why it has to reach the last stage only after all other uh, disciplines have come and evolved to the positivistic stage. So let's take an example. Let's take the discipline of economics. So economics is a very important discipline, and it is the study of the production, distribution, and use of goods and services. Right. So the economy is a social structure, and it has been a very important area of study for many sociologists like Marx and Weber. So, sociology sees economics as a social factor in and in the effects it has. The discipline, when the discipline of economics changes, society also changes. So, one of the best examples is Keynes. When John Maynard Keynes, he's one of the most prominent economic thinkers and influenced the what is called as deficit financing. During the Great Economic Recession in 1929, what he proposed was spending government funds to create demands so that the animal spirits of the markets might rise and make the economy, keep the economy going. So it had a big effect on the society, right? It influenced the way of thinking of many American presidents, and in India, after the 2008 financial crisis, one of the things our former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh did was follow Keynesian economics of deficit financing. So it affected Indian society as well. So this is the idea of theory. Theoretical way of explaining things rather than faith. Theory is a logical explanation how a given empirical phenomena works. Theories are always tentative, that is, it doesn't provide the final answer, so it doesn't demand faith, that is absolute belief. It has an important component of skepticism, uh, that there is always a back and forth between theory and observation. We create a theory, we again try to observe new phenomena and try to explain it whether through theory. If it is able to be explained, then that theory is thought to be true at that point of time. But if it is made false, that means we have to modify the theory so that it could explain further such things. So thus a law of nature is a rule that is based upon observation regularly and provides predictions that goes beyond the immediate situation upon which it is based. So Comte expects sociology to come up with such laws for society. So let's talk about some of the advantages and goals of positivism. Positivism discovers while other systems invent. Positivism is based on empirical observation. It alone provides the basis for agreement. So there's an old English saying which says that there are three things that one should never discuss in polite company: religion, politics, and sex. Because at least for religion and politics, the people tend to be very emotional, and there is always disagreement, and it never resolves anything. For Comte, he saw this kind of disagreement having disastrous consequences because during that time a lot of people were killed because of the social and political upheaval. So, for him, sociology should help in guiding politics and social reorganization. Government by measure should replace government by men. The business of sociology is to discover those factors and laws that can be used to guide society in its quest for improving the human condition. So there was no reasoning with ideology and belief because neither of it was based on reason. And hence there is no objective basis for agreement. So, therefore, if the working of society and progress were empirically available, Comte believed that they were, then there is a foundation for agreement. And this foundation provides hope, such as in medicine, it cures disease. So, this hope in the ability of humankind to guide its own destiny is at the heart of the Enlightenment thinking. This view is rooted in the ideas of a predictable universe and that the free reasoning of the human mind. Together, these forged the ideas of modern values and progress. So, in Comte's theory, yeah, when he talked about the queen of the sciences and how disciplines will evolve, he didn't mention about psychology. So, why did Comte miss psychology? It was because he saw something in psychology which cannot be observed, because observation required objectivity, that is, a separation from the thing being observed. Right? So the point is not psychology. The point is that how you apply this kind of thinking in society. So this means that not only society became something bigger than our face-to-face interactions, but we have to understand it as a separate entity, a separate being, which is in itself and has its own nature and laws which guide it, and which separate it from the existence of people who make it. This is a very crucial idea. At the same time, this larger and more abstract entity began to be perceived as something that could exert influence, independent influence over the people. And further, taking the same idea forward, society could be seen as an entity that could be steered or guided if we could find out what these laws were. So let's see some of the sociological methods, ways to study this new entity called society, uh, according to Comte. So Comte proposed specific methods for creating sociological knowledge. First was comparative sociology. That means uh, our observations as a sociologist are always comparative. We compare different experiments, yeah, different cultures or different different periods in history. uh, and there are two types of experiments. First is in a laboratory, right, which is direct experiments which you cannot apply in sociology because the subject matter is too complex. And second is indirect or natural experiments, and these are more suitable for sociology because they happen whenever ordinary course of life is disrupted. So when this disruption happens, it sometimes exposes the underlying structures and processes, social facts that are sometimes difficult to see in day-to-day life. So one of the examples you could say is some historic events in India, like the Green Revolution. Right, in our syllabus, we will see later on in paper 2 how the Green Revolution, which was a disruptive event, right? So it increased the agricultural production, food production, a lot in India of a specific food grains. But we would see how it disrupted other social institutions, like how it has caused only a few regions to be developed, and how in those regions it has affected the traditional social structure of the village due to migration, with the effect in caste, how resources were captured, and its effects on gender. So this is what sociology studies, and this is a way in which, according to Comte, we can study events which disrupt normal course of life. So also we can make comparisons across cultures. Like in our first thinker, Durkheim, we will see how he compared different uh, uh, societies, different countries, different religious groups to come up with his theory about suicide. How suicide itself is not a personal act but controlled by society. So, this comparative sociology is a very important sociological tool, according to Comte. So Comte also saw a methodological issue which may happen, which is the quantitative versus qualitative debate. Like in, we'll see in sociological methods that there are two ways of doing things. First is quantitative, which is believing in numbers. Uh, Observation which can be recorded in numbers and statistics, and quantitative, right? Things which cannot be, like interviews. You're interviewing a person, you're recording observation, cannot be put in numbers. So this is a quantitative methodology. For Comte, he didn't believe that too much in statistics and numbers. This was evolution in the theoretical perspective of positivism, which happened later, during the time of Durkheim and during the evolution of science in general. For Comte, he emphasized more on the qualitative. And it had some importance too. Like, what Comte is trying to say is that these things uh, can affect life. And the enlightened mind of enlightenment of the mind to see society and use sociological ideas and theories is very important. And we saw that so this is somewhat what C. Wright Mills also said when he talked about the sociological imagination. Hence, Comte saw that the regeneration of education is a key for a mind suitably trained to become able to exercise uh, and convert all the events in life into sociological indications, how they affect your life, your sociological imagination. Comte saw that this state of mind would involve a totality of one's being, including emotion. In fact, Comte argued that positivism created a new feeling in people, different from those generated by fiction, religion, or human life in general. So, this new social sentiment is deeper because it is personal, it is reflective. That is, you can think and make progress and try to prove it false, but you know that it is true because it is the result of scientific conviction. The new feeling is hope that empirically based knowledge can bring. So, this is the end of the lesson, and please join us in our next video where we begin the first thinker of chapter 3, Emile Durkheim. Subscribe to get information when the new videos are released, and please like us and help us in making more videos.